Welcome back to Engineer in the Loop, the show where we explore how engineers, leaders, and organizations are shaping the future of technology from the inside out. Today we're diving into what it really takes to turn bold ideas into real impact inside a large enterprise. We'll be talking about internal incubators, how they work, why they matter, and what success actually looks like when innovation happens at scale. I'm excited to welcome Taylor Black in this episode, Director of AI and Venture Ecosystems in the Office of the CTO at Microsoft. Taylor sits at the intersection of engineering, entrepreneurship, and strategy, helping teams across Microsoft experiment, build, and scale new ideas that push the company forward. In this episode, we will see what it means to run an internal incubator at one of the world's largest technology companies, how Microsoft measures success beyond just shipping product, and what engineers and leaders can learn from building venture-style innovation from within. Let's get into it. Welcome to the next episode. We have another Brianless episode, but fear not, we have Taylor Black, Director of AI Venture Ecosystems in the Office of the CTO at Microsoft. Welcome.
Thank you, Alex.
So that's a really long title, but before we get to that, I'm kind of curious, how does one get to where you are today? Did you always want to be in venture and AI, or how did getting into programming or just software in general kind of pique your interest?
Yeah, certainly. So I learned to program in high school, right? It kind of, as the internet was dawning, I thought it was amazing to be able to do things in JavaScript and PHP and HTML and CSS and get your ideas out there in the world. And so I've kind of supported myself all through my liberal arts education by programming on the side, freelance on the web stack primarily. That in grad school, that kind of deepened, and I started a web development agency and then a B2B SaaS company, and ended up doing B2B SaaS as with Fizzy Media as our company, rather than practicing law after graduating law school. That dropped me handily into the kind of the internet startup ecosystem when I moved back to Seattle, and I stayed in that ecosystem, having a lot of fun, creating around ideas and a lot of deep tech as well. After selling my company in 2015, I consulted for a little bit, but then went into venture building. First at Intellectual Ventures and then at Microsoft. Venture building's weird, right? Because it's kind of like startups, but meta, because you're making startups and they end up kind of being your product in some ways. And I find it tends to encourage people with diverse backgrounds to be a part of that, because there's a bunch that goes into forming a company from the ground up. And so I've found myself at home with other Swiss Army knives in that sort of ecosystem for a while now.
That's really cool. I'm just curious, with your background, do you have any top 3 mistakes people should avoid if they're trying to start a startup, or do you have your top X list of things that you should focus on, or maybe things you should avoid when you're trying to do that or get into that ecosystem?
Totally. Yeah. Well, first off is not solving a customer problem or a customer problem that's large enough. A lot of founders that I work with will have a great idea with regard to something that they've solved in their own lives, potentially, or a theoretical solution they see to a theoretical problem. But until you're able to drive that down to actual customer feedback and enough customers who are willing to pay you for said solution, then you don't really have a company, right? You have an idea, and that's not a bad thing. Ideas are great. Not every idea should be a company. And that's not a bad thing, but it's important to have enough paying customers for paying you to solve their problem in order to get a company off the ground in the first place. And so talking to a lot of customers in the beginning ends up being a really important piece. Second, except in very narrow cases, it's almost always better to talk about your idea and how you think about taking it forward than it is to be super worried about somebody else stealing it. I put an asterisk on that, right? Because there's such a thing as intellectual property, and there's some important considerations there. But by far, I have seen more ideas die because the founder is concerned about telling other people about their idea than I have people doing the hard blood, sweat, and tears of actually making a company come to fruition around an idea. So there's kind of a creative tension there, and I tend to lean towards the share more often, because you're able to find better fit to your customer problem solution as part of that. And then third, this may seem counterintuitive, but never start a company in order to get rich. It is by far the hardest, most difficult way of getting rich in any that I have encountered. Um, and while it has perhaps a better success rate than trying to get into the NFL or the NHL or something like that, it approaches that sort of statistical possibility, whereas kind of having a big tech job or something along those lines ends up being a more guaranteed way of going about that. That said, as entrepreneurs, we just can't help ourselves often, and that's not a bad thing
Mhm.
either. Just do it for the right reasons.
That's interesting because I think everybody gets caught up in the Amazon, Microsoft, Facebook, Meta, whatever you want to call it now, it's kind of like the lottery thing, right? Like, oh, I'm going to start this company and it's just going to flywheel to such a point that I'm just going to be crazy rich. But in reality, um, a lot of companies are super successful being, like a $500,000 company. Then, that's a lot for, especially if you have a small staff or just you and maybe some contractors. Like, there's scales to this, and I think that's what people always wanna think of, like, "I'm gonna hit the flywheel and we're gonna go, straight to the moon," when maybe you'll be somewhere else, but that's still successful in a lot of books.
It is. Well, and it
Uh
actually ends up being more so in many ways, because you have a lot of control over your destiny. Your so-called lifestyle business ends up having a great work-life balance, and you're able to
mhm.
provide a lot of value to the tech ecosystem. So I fully endorse starting companies of that nature. Not everything has to be venture-backed.
I was gonna say, do you have any advice of when not to take venture capital? Or where are you on that ecosystem of should you take as much money as you can get, or should you be a little bit more hesitant?
Yeah, I'm on the more hesitant side of things, primarily because not because venture can't be super important and helpful at certain stages of growth for your company, but there's a lot of uh, like pomp and circumstance around venture, such that raising venture can kind of become an end in itself rather than creating a successful business that's solving a customer problem.
Mhm,
Um, and so the way that I think about this as an entrepreneur is you have to explain why the venture is necessary for your company to achieve its goals. Now, that has to be done in kind of a hard, concrete way, not just a, well, if I have more money, I will be more successful sort of vein, right? Because that doesn't actually explain what the money is going to do for your business plan and how you anticipate being able to achieve certain returns. Um, and so the way that I would think about it is you kind of hold off on raising venture until you absolutely need it. Not from a the company is going to die if I don't have the venture, but more of a the business plan now calls for rapid growth. The business plan now calls for uh, the ability to sustain myself over corporate enterprise buying cycles, which can be a year or more, and concrete business problems like that, where you're able to tie the dollars directly to a 100x outsized success in the trajectory of the company, because that's what the venture capital is going to require of you. And if you're just see this as a way of getting to the next 10x milestone, then it probably isn't the best path.
that makes sense. But yeah, because all VCs want the unicorn, and if you're like, "Hey, I can make you back your money in, 50 years," they don't want that. They want 10x, 100x their money like tomorrow. So, and then it also puts potentially more expectations on you, right? To your point,
Mhm.
like a lifestyle business you start, using the word that loosely, but it's like, to your point, you're not beholden to shareholders. You won't get kicked out of your company because you didn't get a return that they're expecting, or the board isn't mad at you. Like, you can kind of truck along. And if you want to have a slow year, you could take more time off. You could be like, I think it's Patagonia's CEO takes like 3 or 4 months off a year because he owns the company and he kind of just does whatever he wants.
Yeah. Well, and also, right, it allows you to pursue the business in the pieces of the business that you thoroughly enjoy. And,
Mhm.
and sometimes that might be growth, right? Like hand over fist, acquisition of customers can be great for certain kinds of companies. But in other cases, that takes you as the entrepreneur away from the kinds of problems that you used to like solving, into a whole new set of problems that you may care very much less about. And so there's a balance there, and I think it behooves us as kind of the entrepreneurial ecosystem to recognize all of those different things as success, because it all helps the entire tech ecosystem that these different things are being pursued.
Yeah, I think that those are all great points. I kind of have a maybe a little bit of a tangent here or changing topic a little bit. So you talked about like all the freedom of entrepreneurship, figuring things out, how you use it to help fund your what you thought you were going to be a lawyer and now you changed. How do you go from like basically the loose wild west to potentially one of the biggest enterprises, like the top 5 in the world? Like how does that transition happen? Are you like trying to fight to get out or fight to loosen the reins or like how does that happen?
Well, that's a great question. Yeah, in fact, before Microsoft, I think the largest company I'd worked for had been like 800 people, um, and so it was a very, very different experience for sure. Uh, and I guess there's kind of two reasons why I'm in it, and why I enjoy it is thoroughly is well, first off, it's the group that I'm in is kind of very entrepreneurial and small and kind of operates on that sort of basis. I think you can find this inside a number of large companies, not just Microsoft, but where your team matters a whole lot. And so if you're on a small team, if you can have a lot of creativity and authenticity and agency over what you're able to do, then the large enterprise can kind of feel like a small team still. You just happen to be a small team working across a subset of the market instead of the market that you would on the outside of the enterprise. Um, so there's that aspect. I think the other aspect is that I was invited into the CTO's office in order to build a venture studio, and so this is the fourth venture studio that I've built. I built one in kind of in deep tech. I've built one in the academic setting. I've built one that was very much on the early stage idea sort of space. And so this new opportunity to try out this venture studio model in an entirely different context with entirely different constraints was super compelling to me, as a builder, as a venture builder, um, and learned a lot, and still learning a lot as we kind of integrate those kinds of motions across the company. But yeah, that was my impetus and why it's still very ripe for experimentation internally, and that's exciting in the same way that I found building my own venture exciting. Of course, there's downsides, right? There's like things move a lot more slowly. You don't have as many levers to pull as you would heading your own company in order to make things happen or not make things happen. Um, but that comes with the joy of being able to experiment in this space where it's a different kind of space.
I have to imagine that there's a level of camaraderie that maybe doesn't exist when you're doing your own thing too, right? Because like when you're the last head on the top of the chain, like at to a certain point, to a certain amount of decisions, you may take like other people's feedback and whatever, but you might be the one pulling the trigger versus like in a company like Microsoft, you might have other peers you could take and consult with, and then like you're a voice in the room and can work together instead of like
Yeah,
the
no, it's true.
loneliness of
It is, and it is lonely. No, I think that's something we don't talk enough about in the entrepreneurial ecosystem, where until you've had that experience of being a founder and worried about ensuring that you have payroll and the kind of the blood, sweat, and tears that go into building a business and providing jobs to people, um, it, it it's lonely in and of itself, and then it's lonely because not a lot of people just don't understand that strain and pressure. So it's taking care of yourself as a founder, as an entrepreneur, I think means building that community and being intentional about it, so that you're able to have that sounding board for the decisions which we all have to make at some point in time. But yeah, calling that out is important, I think, Alec.
yeah, and I think it's one of those things like I see advice all the time of like connect with other founders, connect with all that, because like it can be kind of isolating, just in general. I'm curious. You talked about a studio at Microsoft. What kind of stages of startups are you looking at? Is this all like internal ideas that you're then incubating, or are you also looking externally, or how does an idea come to your desk, and how do you then rate it? Is it worth continuing to pursue, or maybe not right for you guys at this time?
Yeah, that's a great question. The way in which we instantiated this entity, which you call very innovatively incubation studio, um, is it's entirely internal. So we don't look at external ideas. We don't look at external teams. Sometimes they come across our desk, but we have better places inside the company that are meant for those. The way that we incepted Incubation Studio is it's intended for strategic big bets from Microsoft that aren't being contemplated currently within the larger company. Um, CTOs' offices in general, large organizations end up being fairly small and often cost centers because they aren't directly creating product, right?
Hmm.
They're doing a lot of coordinating things. They're doing the strategic look ahead so that the company has what it needs in 7 to 10 years, rather than kind of the execution in the near term. And so we took that kind of as one of our goals for the incubation studio is what is that further out sort of thing that we should be paying attention to. How do we strategically take ideas and move them through a pipeline, uh, gathering customer signal, reducing all of the risks associated with a technology roadmap, with its teams formation, with its go-to-market, um, so that we really did kind of take an idea and two people, and we'd turn them slowly over the course of iterative kind of stage gate funding and market testing and customer testing, uh, to teams of about 30 that had a good bead on revenue, and then spin them out into the product group so that that thing will continue growing and be ready to land on the product group's roadmap at the right time. But it ends up kind of being a de-risking sort of function for Microsoft writ large. And so our 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 rubric in some ways was, well, is this an idea that belongs at Microsoft? There are plenty of great business ideas that will never happen inside of Microsoft and shouldn't, right? They should
Hmm.
go be their thing outside. And so what is it about Microsoft that makes this idea really fly? Second, is will it be able to get to $1 billion in revenue within 5 years? It sounds like a funny joke. Well, it did to me when I started, like, oh, $1 billion in 5 years. Oh no, they actually mean it, because anything less than that really is a rounding error from Microsoft, and they don't care about it, right? And so there's a piece that is driven by the constraints of the enterprise ecosystem. And so this too is another major weed out factor, right? Because there's a lot of interesting stuff that we could do, but it doesn't reach the revenue level that's an investment in that would be wise. Um, and the third, it had to be not being done by an already existing product group, right? It's not like the CTO's office is like it's super different in the way in which it can think about and innovate things, such that a product group couldn't do it just as well. What our focus was is things that are further out, things that are too risky for the product group to wisely invest in them, because they have a P&L, they have investor expectations to meet and market expectations to meet. And we have this sort of differentiated group that's allowed to take more risks intentionally on behalf of the company. And so working through that ends up being kind of our tripartite way of thinking about our investment theses for things that come across our desk. Vast majority of ideas, we don't take. We tell people, hey, this might be a great idea, but it's not a Microsoft idea. Go do it externally, and here's some great people to go talk with about how that might work. Or this is a great idea, but it belongs in the product group already. It doesn't have the level of risk, nor does it have the far outness that this deserves. So why don't you go talk to this other product group, because they're already working on that. And so our investment thesis ends up being fairly narrow if you think about it in terms of the world at large, but one that's tuned well to what the group is trying to deliver.
That totally makes sense, because if you think about it, like Microsoft as a whole, we go back to that lifestyle business, right? If you did a startup that you made $500,000 for Microsoft, that doesn't make or break an expectations call.
Yep.
Like you said, it's a rounding error. It doesn't even get called out as its own line item. It'd just be
Yep.
like whatever lumped in. So that's totally makes sense, and it's just a scale that I think is kind of boggling, right?
It
Like
is.
there's a lot of companies that if their company ever made $1 billion, that's a huge success, and they're just
Yes.
done. Sell it, and
Yep.
Microsoft's like, nope,
100%.
that's what we need to do all the time, and just rinse and repeat.
Yeah. Sell it to us. We love buying companies at that stage, you know?
So it sounds like making an analogy to maybe the more public sector or private sector, it'd be more of like you're kind of in the angel stage, right? You get this idea, you don't necessarily know exactly how it's going to work out, and then kind of incubate it with a couple people, and then if it starts having legs, you then spin up teams around it, and then eventually figure out what product group that ultimately would be belonging to, assuming it fits within the walls of
Mhm.
some future roadmap. Is that kind of the format?
Yep, that's very accurate. In many ways, I would say that we spin it out at like a Series A stage. That's about maybe Series B, somewhere between Series A and Series B, both in
Okay.
terms of revenue and in terms of team size. Of course, that's a little bit squishy right now because AI has changed company valuations and funding stages, such that it's kind of a
Yeah.
bit of a morass right now. But but I would kind of use that as a bit of a rule of thumb. I see Series A as the company has found a product market fit, and now all you need is kind of the growth stage, the hockey sticker, right? And we
Fuel on the fire.
exactly, yeah, and that's about when we'd say, oh, the incubation seems to have found this is ready for the hockey stick. CTO's offices in general aren't funded for the hockey stick. That's for product group because you're able to tie it directly to customer needs.
And then they can get the P&L to bring on more people and see that
Exactly,
increases profit and all that fun stuff.
exactly, yeah.
This might be under NDA. If it is, totally okay, and I can cut this out. But is there a particular product or service that you're allowed to say, like, we started with that and now it's like open to the public?
That's a good question. We have a couple. Well, the thing that ends up happening for a number of these is that they end up being elements of platforms that become more integrated as a holistic product. And so in some ways it's hard to like be able to differentiate like, oh yeah, that's where this thing had its inception or beginning. Because you can't it's kind of you can't see the way in which it's grown into the product group as a whole. And so it's a bit of a non-answer, but there's a significant amount of revenue that's started as projects in our office. My goal, right, as I mentioned, was to have one that we could point to is that at $1 billion in revenue a few years after we launched it. And we haven't. The earliest we launched something was about 3 years ago. And so we're still waiting for that B to hit, but we're a number of them are in their hundreds of millions, and that's exciting. Of course, at that point too, it's hard to because it's inside the corporate ecosystem. It's hard to point to. Yes, it was that did the whole thing because we handed it off to another team who's very much responsible for it and is taking it through as part of the overall product group. So it ends up being more of a quieter, like, how are we tracking our metrics for our portfolio and less of a, yeah, we did that, which isn't the role of a CTO's office in the first place.
Right. Not beating the drum and being like, we made, I don't know, I'm just going to make something up. We
Yeah.
made the Phi 3 model and we
Yeah.
decided to build Microsoft's own internal AI models. And that was us. And now you guys don't quite track it that close.
Nope.
And
No,
then it
well,
goes and,
exactly. Well, no, it's our product groups that are making us possible, right? And so it's
Mhm.
it's their contributions to it. They're bringing it to market. Their careful stewardship of their P&L that makes all of that possible, and we want to celebrate their success.
That's awesome. I have about 3 minutes left. I just have to ask somebody who's looking 5 years out in the future, 7 years out in the future, with AI in your title, what does that mean to Microsoft? What's that mean to you guys? Do you think it's going to be more transformational? Do you think we're going to hit a plateau? Are you sick of hearing about AI stuff at this point?
No, well, I'm still very excited about it, and in fact, I feel like we're just barely getting started. The value proposition that I've always seen with AI, and this has been the case for a couple of years now, ever since the 2022 ChatGPT moment, is less in the generative talking back and forth and very much more in the autonomous agent space. Autonomous agents right now, everybody kind of, I feel like can chuckle about them a little bit because there's no ecosystem for which in which they can operate. I liken it to calling a carpenter over to your house to solve something, and the carpenter is probably very good at their job, but because there's no ecosystem, there's no money to pay the carpenter. There's no way you can tell them your address so that they can get there. There's no roads for the carpenter to travel on in order to make that happen. And all of the problems that we already take for granted in our lived ecosystem translate to the agentic ecosystem too. So we have to come up with communication layers. We have to come up with money layers, security layers, all of the different pieces that actually enable agents to do the things that they should be able to do. That's just starting, right? We have like a couple of early examples. We have small ecosystems that are a little bit neighborhoodly, but they haven't increased to the city or state or nation or global scale at all really yet. To continue that analogy, that's where the huge value prop's going to be. This is where I can see Sam Altman's comment around, the one-person billion-dollar company as having some legs, right? Because you can have a team of agents working for you that are doing a lot of things that used to be associated purely with human work. But yeah, so I'm excited for all of that. It's definitely going to come in with a lot of shifts to how we work, to how we think about work, and we'll have to navigate those carefully and intelligently. But that's exciting to me too.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate your time. We're at time right now. Is there any last minute thing you want to plug, or how can people stay up to date with you if they want to follow along what you're doing, or any of that sort of stuff?
Yeah, certainly. So I'm fairly active on LinkedIn. Feel free to reach out to me there, or to drop questions. I there. That's always great. But yeah, no. The maybe the key message to leave with is entrepreneurs love navigating these kinds of strange and wonderful new waters. And so lean into those entrepreneurial skills and let's make what this technology can do shine.
Awesome. Thank you for your time, and we'll see everybody next week. Bye, everybody.
Welcome back to Engineer in the Loop, the show where we explore how engineers, leaders, and organizations are shaping the future of technology from the inside out. Today, we're diving into what it really takes to take bold ideas into real impact inside a large enterprise. We'll be talking about internal incubators, how they work, why they matter, and what success actually looks like when innovation happens at scale. I'm excited to welcome Taylor Black, Director of AI Venture Ecosystems in the Office of the CTO at Microsoft. Taylor sits at the intersection of engineering, entrepreneurship, and strategy, helping teams across Microsoft experiment, build, and scale new ideas that push the company forward. In this episode, we will see what it takes to run an internal incubator at one of the world's largest technology companies, how Microsoft measures success beyond just shipping product, and what engineers and leaders can learn from building venture-style innovation from within. Let's get into it. Welcome back to Engineer in the Loop, the show where we explore how engineers, leaders, and organizations are shaping the future of technology from the inside out. Today, we're diving into what it really takes to turn bold ideas into real impact inside a large enterprise. We'll be talking about internal incubators, how they work, why they matter, and what success actually looks like when innovation happens at scale. I'm excited to welcome Taylor Black in this episode, Director of AI and Venture Ecosystems in the Office of the CTO at Microsoft. Taylor sits at the intersection of engineering, entrepreneurship, and strategy, helping teams across Microsoft experiment, build, and scale new ideas that push the company forward. In this episode, we will see what it means to run an internal incubator at one of the world's largest technology companies, how Microsoft measures success beyond just shipping product, and what engineers and leaders can learn from building venture-style innovation from within. Let's get into it.